Hello, welcome to the Daisy Dates podcast, where I talk all things dating, relationships, mindset, and well, today, a little bit of heartbreak. I'm joined with Holly Jaskolka from Break-Ups and Love, and Holly is a breakup coach and accredited EFT practitioner. She's also a yoga teacher as well, and has been running yoga classes and self-care sessions for quite a few years, and she uses a lot of relaxation and visualization techniques with her clients, which I'm hoping we'll get kind of a taster of today as well, to help you, especially if you're going through a little bit of a heartbreak. Welcome, Holly.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, well, I love your reels. I love the quotes that you put on your Instagram, and I think you've got a lot of useful tips, and of course from your own experience as well. So we're kind of going to delve in deep and bring that up because, well, it's quite exciting to see how much progress you've made in the last year, but we'll get into that shortly. But first, I always do start with a this or a that game.
Okay.
So in terms of a breakup, after a breakup, go no contact or keep as friends.
No contact.
We'll talk about that as well. Delete and block or take no action?
Delete and block.
Would you rather a breakup in real life or over the phone?
In real life.
Wine and dined or picnic in the park?
Both.
Love it, yes. Red or white?
Wine at red.
Love it. And walk and talk or sit down dinner?
Oh, again, both, but walk and talk if I had to pick one.
Yeah, for like a first date.
Yeah.
I think that's nice. I think it keeps it casual and it keeps it like kind of low pressure as well. Yeah, which I think works quite nicely. So we are going to delve into breakups. Now, I did a breakup episode in episode 7 where I opened up about some of my heartbreak. And actually, some of the heartbreak I spoke about was 2 or 3 years ago. And some new stuff has kind of came out recently that I've only just found out this week about that breakup, which is weird. Like, you know, when something happens a few years later and you find out, I kind of assume that there was like cheating going on, but then it come like you hear the truth years later, but it has no effect on you when you hear this stuff years later. And that's where hindsight is a beautiful thing, because had I have heard that during the breakup, that would have been, I think, knowing the fact that it was true would have hit a lot worse. So do go back and listen to episode 7 if you haven't. I'm sure we'll touch on some of it in this episode anyway. But Holly, from you, can you talk to us a little bit about the breakup that kind of kicked Breakups and Love off?
Yes, of course. So, well, that's an interesting question actually, because I think a breakup I'm now 35, and a breakup in my early 20s actually started this whole journey, although I didn't realize it at the time. But the breakup that really kind of catapulted me into what I'm doing now in a much more refined way, I suppose, is the one I had last year in 2022, early 2022. So I'd been unhappy in that relationship for a long time, probably around about a year, 18 months. It was a little bit turbulent of a relationship at the beginning as well. But we did have a good year in between. We were together for around about 4 years. And by the way, a lot of what I'm saying now, as you've mentioned hindsight, like a lot of what I realise now is very reflective. And I think it's very easy not to see it at the time. But the actual breakup itself, we were having problems for a little while. We couldn't resolve certain things that kept coming up again and again. We couldn't come to an agreement. I had this like deep down faith that we would figure it out. I mean, I knew I was unhappy, and I debated whether to leave the relationship myself. But kind of I wanted it to work, and I don't mind saying that I did want it to work, and I thought that it was possible that it could work. But fundamentally, our values and the way we'd been brought up were entirely different. And although that's not like a bad thing in many ways, it really affected our relationship. So there was tensions going on. And by the way, I'm not blaming him at all. Like, I chose to stay in that situation. I think it's really important to be reflective and realistic about both sides and
honest. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
exactly. But so the breakup itself, we were having issues, and then we were having an argument as such, or a heated conversation, which sounds ridiculous when I say it back. But it all revolved around Bongos Bingo, which is a Bongos Bingo, the Bongos Bingo that people go to. and we were having this kind of argument, and not about bongos bingo, but the situation involved bongos bingo. And he just said, I need to leave. So I said, okay. He said, I'm going to go for space. He left for space, went to stay with family. We lived together at the time. And I'd respected that and said, okay, go for space. We'll speak at the weekend. This was on the Tuesday. And then on the Friday, I opened a letter that said occupier from the Royal Mail. And it said a confirmation that the post from this person has been redirected. So I sent him a text with a picture of the letter and said, is this what I think it is? Like, are we over? And he said, yeah. But we can still speak if you want. And that was kind of it. After obviously living together, it was my house, but he moved into it a few years later. Then he didn't come back. We saw each other once. I dropped off some stuff with him, and then I left the house and he went round and got the rest of his things, and I wasn't there. He left his key. And we had to have some conversations in the months after that because I decided to sell the house. I was ready to leave the area and like move away and have a fresh new start. So we had to speak because of, having been on the mortgage together. But it wasn't nice in terms of the conversation was difficult, and but it was civil, but it was difficult at times. And yeah, then the house sold and that was it. We haven't spoken since. That was last August the house sold. So it was a big relief actually being able to go no contact after that point, and I chose to go no contact. And I say delete and block, and that's I know every situation is unique and different in every breakup, and we'll probably talk about this later, but I don't think there's any hard fast rule. That's just my personal opinion of what really helped me in that breakup. But at the time of the breakup, I was struggling with my mental health due to previous experience with domestic abuse, and I had been told I'd got post-traumatic stress. So at the time we broke up, I'd been dealing with that, and I'd basically been living in a state of like hypervigilance for quite a long time and been quite unhappy, but not really been able to put my finger on it, and then started having physical symptoms, which then led me to go to the doctor about it. So I was already having therapy for that at the time that he left. And I'm really grateful for that because it not only helped me deal with the past experience, but helped me through the breakup as well. And I had that for 11 months. So it was a really tough time where it was a house sale, it was a breakup, it was dealing with a previous experience. It was a very cold, quick, sudden, blindsided breakup. Even though, like I say, we were having problems, but it was a lot to deal with. And having been quite miserable for some years before even the relationship, I just knew this is it. I've got to do everything that I have been speaking to people about. I've really got to put all this into practice. Really got to look after myself here and figure this out, and learn from this, not just this experience, but from all of the experiences I've had since my breakup in my early 20s, which basically is where lots of different things started to happen. So that's why I say that one's really the catalyst. But it was last year that was like, no, this is a real test. Everything's to the test now, and it's time to get happy.
Oh, I love that. Well, I think you're definitely on the way. You
Yeah.
you posted a photo the other day of, well, some videos of you on your Instagram stories a year ago compared to now, and
Yeah.
I messaged you because I was like, this is insane. Like, you don't realize how sad you are at the time. Well,
Yeah.
maybe you do, but you don't realize how it affects you in every single essence of your being when you're that sad.
Yeah.
I look back at photos after, well, not purposely, but when you come across them on the camera roll, and I came across some recently and I was like, gosh, I did not look good. Everything about me, even like my hair looked unhealthy.
Yeah.
And it's weird how you have this, your glow just goes and then it comes back one day, but unfortunately deep in the breakup, you don't always think that it will.
Yeah.
So did you own the house and then he came on the mortgage with you eventually?
Yeah. So I bought the house before I'd met him, and we were going to COVID happened and I was trying to sell the house so we could buy together. Because of COVID, there was all these obviously problems with house sales, and I'd moved out basically, and the house sale was going through, and then it fell through because of issues with COVID. Everything was just a mess in COVID. And then one day I just said to him, look, my house is there. I've got an empty house. Why don't, we're looking for another house, but why don't we move in? And in hindsight, that I don't think was a good idea for the relationship in of itself. I think having a fresh new start in a new house that we both bought together would have been a good idea. But at the time, you just do what you think's best, and a lesson learned.
I think there's that song, isn't there, Perfect Strangers? And I think that's so scary, especially when entering a new relationship. I'm in a new one now, and I think what's so weird is to think how one day they could be strangers again. Like after a certain amount of years, I don't think you assume that they're going to be a stranger. And I think, you read about people ghosting people, and I think time doesn't necessarily mean anything. I think you could have a great 3 months with someone and you can still be in a lot of pain if they hurt you and ghost you or whatever. But you don't expect people to do that to you 4 years in, or, even a year in. Like, you just don't people to lack that much respect, that there isn't like a face-to-face long conversation rather than a sign that comes to your house, or just a notice that you get. I think that's so hard to deal with.
Yeah, it was really hard. I think I mean, I'm not, again, when I look back, it was hard at the time, and I was really angry and upset, and it took a lot of processing. And I know a lot of people have breakups where the ending in itself can actually be harder to come to terms with than the fact that you're not with this person anymore. And that's certainly how I felt, where the way it happened it wasn't that as such that we weren't together, it was the way it happened. And I know I felt at the time, whether this is correct or not, I can only speak for me, but I felt at the time that the conversation we did have, that time that I dropped off some things, felt a little bit tokenistic after finding that letter. And that was hard, knowing that, or feeling that somebody that you've been with for a long time, invested this time in, didn't want to kind of honour a kind, compassionate way, because we had a time before that where we'd spoken about separating, and I remember saying, well, we've got a few options here, let's sleep on it, and in the morning let's make a decision together, let's figure this out. If you leave and go for space, and let's have a think, or you leave and that's it, or we just work as a team and get through this. And I remember thinking at the time, like, if this doesn't work, it doesn't work, and it's okay. And we need to just be kind to each other. And if I can say it in that way and know that I've tried everything I can, and we both figure this out together and we agree, and it's hard to say it's mutual because obviously you don't want it to happen. But when I thought back to that point, I thought, like, it would have been so nice to have that same response or situation when it finally did end, of that, let's have a conversation here and agree it's not working. But yeah, the ending was hard, it was tough, especially with everything else going on for me at the time. It felt like it all came at once and everything came crashing down, so it wasn't easy.
It always does in a breakup, doesn't it? It's like everything goes wrong. It's like you get, like, something breaks on your car, like it always happens during a breakup. It's like you manifest everything else happens because you're just putting out such bad vibes to everywhere you go. Did you feel, I assume you lacked, I think you felt like you lacked closure there, right?
Yeah. Closure's a funny one, because I've got, like, certain things that I feel about closure in of itself as kind of term and a concept. But yeah, it just felt very confusing. I mean, now I look back on it, I'm like, it is what it is. It's okay. People are entitled. People feel the way they feel. The way they end a relationship doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person, even though the behaviour you might not agree with. I've got no resentment towards him for doing it in that way. He was doing the best he knew at the time, whether I agree with it or not. I don't think there's any benefit for carrying that on and holding on to that. And that was part of the work that I did, to kind of just come to a place of, it is what it is.
That's very mature.
Well, yeah, you could say that. I think I think it's like about if you hold on to it, is it benefiting? And I feel like, you know, it's trying, if you can't understand it, it's okay. Like, you might never understand it or get it, but I'd rather not understand it and move on and be like, well, it is what it is, than have hold on to resentment.
Yeah, okay, so then what are your thoughts on closure?
So to me, I think a lot of people think that there's this perfect moment where you'll have that final conversation where they'll tell you all of the reasons and then you'll be okay and you'll finally walk away and you'll finally feel like, okay, I get it now. I understand and now I feel better and tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll be able to move on. And sometimes I think people think they need closure in inverted commas to be able to be happy and move on, when really sometimes I didn't get closure though. I need the closure though, can be kind of an avoidance of the reality of, look, this just didn't work out. And it's not that I think closure is kind in the way that people want it to be. Like, as I've mentioned, it would be nice to have a nice conversation, be like, look, I'm explaining it to you in the best way I can. I'm sorry that I've hurt you, but this is the decision I'm making for me. And that you could see that as closure. But in reality, it doesn't make it any easier. If you want that relationship to work, you still have to face the fact that this relationship is over. And sometimes I think people hold on to this idea of closure as that light bulb moment where everything makes sense and you don't hurt anymore. And that's what I mean by, you can live in that. You could have that conversation and then you could think, well, hang on, there's still unanswered questions. Well, hang on, I still didn't get the closure I wanted. And it's having that,
Mm.
like, almost giving the power away to the other person until you think that you get what you need from them, when in reality, sometimes you just never get what you think you need, because all you want is to have them back. And dealing with the reality of, this is over now, I've got to focus on me and give myself the closure by bringing myself into acceptance, basically.
But also, I think there's always one more question that you could
Yeah.
ask. And also, unless they tell the absolute bluntest truth,
Yeah.
it isn't really closure anyway. Because the breakup 2 or 3 years ago, I really did try for answers, and only, I guess, now this week with the new news, that would have
Mm.
been what I thought could have been closure at the time. But
Yeah.
I never got the truth at the time of what I thought was happening, which has been confirmed. So
Yeah.
I think unless they're really going to sit there and bluntly tell you the truth, which is rare, that someone
Yeah.
wants to do that, usually because they're avoiding the conversation because they know it's going to be hurtful.
Yeah.
I feel like you're never really going to get that full closure. So you're right. I think you have to take full control of yourself and your mind, which is what you teach with Breakups and Love. And
Mm.
you have so much good advice there.
Thank
Um,
you.
let's touch on no contact and your
Yeah.
thoughts there, because this is something that's like I think it's recently gone like very viral online. People talking
Mm.
about no contact. I mean, obviously it's not a new thing, but I think
Mm.
maybe with newer technology, it's easier to just get someone out of your life.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on no contact, and how extreme can we go? Should we, or, I know there's no rules, but could we go with it?
Yeah. So I think it's important to know that some people can't break contact because of, like I said, mortgages, legal,
Kids.
kids, marriage. Some people have really complex relationships in terms of they don't feel safe to break contact because, there's that whole other level of things to deal with where, you maybe feel safer to be in contact. So you know what's the ex's intention are, but that's a different situation altogether. But then I think, like, there's this whole, like, narrative online around having the no contact rule. And I think that's where people get confused, is because they're feeling all of these emotions and they're trying their best to not be in contact, but the emotions take over and then they break the contact. And then they think, well, I broke the rule, it's all my fault. And then it turns into this kind of, oh, I didn't follow the rule and now I've done it wrong. And it's like, no, you're dealing with an emotional human experience where, yes, going no contact could really benefit you. If it's not helping you to be in contact, then be honest with yourself and don't be in contact. It's the same with social media. We're still friends on social media, and I get a lot of DMs about this, and I can see they're posting this and they've said this on their story, and we're trying to stay friends, but now this is upsetting me. And it's like, look, technically that's contact. You're not, maybe not speaking, but you're seeing things. Is this doing you any favors? Rather than focus on what they're doing, bring it back onto you. Is me being in contact, if I can break contact and I can cut contact, is it really benefiting me right now? And how can I protect myself? So the only rule I think there should be around no contact is being honest with yourself about what that contact is bringing into your life and whether that is helping you to move on. Because if the reality is that the situation is over, but you're still in contact, ask yourself why. What is the benefit to me? And the thing is as well, is that, but also having said that, if you then break contact because you have an emotional moment where you just want them back and you want to declare your love for them again, also you're human. So, you know, you don't have to buy into this rule thing and beat yourself up and give yourself a hard time, because also that's not doing you any favors either. So I encourage no contact, but I fully understand that it's not always that simple, and it doesn't always just happen in this clean cut, get the closure, break the contact, move on. 2 months later, you're completely fine. It just doesn't happen like that. We're humans, and every single breakup and every single relationship is totally unique, and we all deal with it in our own way.
Because we all know people, I mean, I'm sure we've done it ourselves as well. It's literally like a form of self-harm in a different way, like in a mental way, when they're like checking the girls that they've followed since the breakup, and oh, they've been on holiday and this girl that I've never heard of before has liked the photo, so obviously they got together on holiday. And it's torturous, and we've all been there. And it's awful, and you just sit there and you think, why am I doing this? Reading over texts of what they once were. Well, 3 years ago he said this, how can he now say it? Last week we had a perfect date and now he's breaking up with me. How does this? And it is absolutely torturous. How did you use your time well after your breakup to like stop those awful moments?
So like I said, we there wasn't any blocking when it came to the initial stages of my breakup, and I will be totally honest, I did a lot of things to help me not be in contact, but before I decided, no, block, delete, that's it, enough. Like, no, after the house sale, when I didn't need to stay in contact, I did have moments where, because of the situation, I was like, I need him to tell me, I need to speak to him, I need to understand. And I did break contact in terms of, I didn't just stay in touch sometimes for the house sale. But once that was done, I going no contact and deleting and blocking, and not just him, anyone with any connection to him removed, because it was like that, I don't want to fall into that trap of seeing something by accident. I need to just completely accept this now. But in terms of what I did, I think there's a lot of different approaches that you can use, and this is what I talk about online and what I help people with, is that obviously you're going through an emotional time, and it's so important to find a strategy to calm and soothe and regulate your emotions. And for me, this was every single day journaling, getting everything out on paper whenever it was coming up. EFT tapping, which is what I practice. I'm a practitioner. Nature is an amazing way to regulate yourself as well. Going outside, having a walk. So I was doing things like that to regulate how I was feeling, and by that I mean ways to handle what was coming up for me and soothe myself and make myself feel better in the moment, because it's doing that for yourself that stops you from making those choices of spiraling out of control. And the only thing that is going to help me is, I need to speak to my ex right now. I'm going to go around there. I'm going to beg them to speak to me. If you can't regulate how you're feeling in the moment, then you're likely to make poor choices that you might regret later and have them more to deal with on top of the breakup. But then there's the other thing of your stability, and it's thinking really practically about, okay, for me it was, I have to go to my job because I have to pay the mortgage. What do I need to be stable? I need to get a good sleep. I need to turn up for my job. It's counting on people around you. You want to go into hermit mode and hide away, and that's fine. But it's also sometimes forcing yourself to be around people who love you, who can take your mind off it, who can spend time with you, who can listen to you, but also you can ask about them, so it can distract you from the breakup for 10 minutes because you'll be thinking about it 24 hours a day. Upping the self-care. So a lot of people, they hear self-care and they zone out because they're like, oh, it's self-care's everywhere. Or they think, oh, it's just a face mask and a bubble bath. And yeah, those things are important because they're nice to do, and they're nice to do for you and give yourself a little bit of TLC. But self-care to me is, again, those honest conversations with yourself. Like, this breakup is happening. I can either just wait for it to blow over and and this is what I've done in the past, which is why I'm so passionate about it. Have a breakup, feel emotional, and just wait for the next person to come along to take this pain away. No kind of no kind of standing in my power and thinking, no, what can I learn from this? Where did I go wrong? What would I change? What would I never accept again? And just kind of be knocked in life of like, oh, I'm in a new relationship now. And actually, if you've not kind of looked at the previous relationship and dealt with the breakup, you're likely, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, you know, for me, it meant I ended up in relationships that were not healthy for me because I hadn't looked at my own self-worth and my own patterns and what I even wanted from a relationship. I hadn't even thought about it. I just kind of fell into them, and dealt with it later, which is what I've been dealing with, I suppose, this last 18 months. And so in terms of what did I do with my time? I mean, I went excessive. I'm talking like self-care is in so many bubble baths, it's ridiculous. But also carrying on with therapy, EFT, journaling, walking, nature, solo dates, getting to discover who even am I and what do I even need in life. Well, I need a hobby. I need more hobbies. I want to build my confidence. I joined a dance class that I've been going to religiously. Like, I just feel like a breakup can be an opportunity. You can either just wait for time to pass and something to happen that's going to help you feel better, or you can actually really dig deep with your time and be honest with yourself and give yourself what you need, because that to me is what is going to have a real massive impact on your future happiness on your own, but also on your next relationships, because you can learn so much from the person you've been with and also who you were in that relationship as well. So everything I talk about online is very practical. And you know, the other thing I just want to say to caveat that with is, as well as like a lot of deep inner work and reflection and journaling and who am I and rediscovery of the self, it's so important to have fun. Like, breakups are serious. Like, let yourself go, let your hair down, have fun, do things that uplift you. Like, you don't have to go into this like rabbit hole of self-analysis, and you know, you can do if you want, but I think you can also fall into a trap of that where you think there's something wrong with me and I need fixing, and it's not about I need fixing, it's about how can I just get through this and learn from it and grow through it and be better next time.
I think that's really good advice. And I think, yeah, you're right. I was with someone recently, a friend that's going through a long-term relationship breakup. And she's making some silly decisions, but she's not getting hurt by them. She's not hurting anyone else by them. She's just being a bit more irrational than usual. And I'm like, you just need to do that stage, because I did that, but just younger, because I've been single a lot of my 20s. And now I'm more in like the serious, okay, find a relationship mode. Whereas I've had a lot of people around me that have been in serious relationships since 18, 19, 20, and now they're going through the breakup. So they haven't sometimes had the kind of fun and the solo holidays and the wild little silly decisions that you make as a 22-year-old, 21-year-old. So I think it's really important to have that stage. I think that's really good advice. And actually journaling, okay, yeah. So I also had a friend recently be like, Daisy, this journaling stuff actually really helps. And she's like, I mean, of course it does. We talk about it all the time. It's all you see. But also there's an aspect of it, right, that talking about it feels a little bit lame, like journal, manifest, write it down. I'm totally there. I believe in it all, but I know how lame it can sound saying it out loud. And I know that some people will just be like, what? But actually I wrote stuff down in my last breakup and it helped loads. And I wrote down what I actually wanted in a partner. And it wasn't the person that had just broken up with me at all, like the personality traits. I realizing when I wrote down what I wanted, I realized that the person I was with actually didn't offer many of those traits at all in any way. Like, he didn't actually treat me very nicely. And I only really realized that when I wrote it down. And then when I wrote it down, I was like, oh, can I offer this too? And I realized, well, actually, okay, maybe I'm not actually ready for this perfect man that I think I want and need, because I also need to, like, you know, get some ducks in a row first as well. So I think journaling, writing stuff down really, really helps. And what's really nice about, I kind of wrote down what I would want in a future partner. I can now look at that with the person I'm currently with, and it's new, and a lot of people are great when they're new, but that list is literally the person that I'm with now.
That's amazing.
And that's that. And also I think if you journal your feelings, it's really nice to be able to then look back and reflect how far you've come. Because if you journal, look at the sad space that you were in a year or whatever ago, it's really nice to see that progress, which you don't always see. I guess a bit like what you saw, but in videos, that glow that came back. I think that's why it's important too. Do it for like yourself, to realize how far you've come for your future self.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you've said there, an exercise I love so much, is that whole write a list of everything you want in a partner. And you might not even be ready to date yet in the midst of your breakup, but it's something fun to do. And then look at the list and be like, well, do I even do that? You know, I'm writing down here that I want someone who goes to the gym 5 days a week and really takes care of their body. And it's like, well, if the last time I went to the gym was 6 years ago, can I actually really expect that? Like, you need to actually, if you're expecting this from someone,
Yeah.
then it's actually like a way that you can guide yourself in, right? Okay, I want all these things, but I can now just actually go and do that myself. And maybe that's how I want to like rebuild my life into this new version of me that actually can ask for those things, because I do them. Because a lot of us, like, we expect all these amazing traits in someone else and we've not
Yes.
actually done, like you say, got your own
100%.
ducks in a row. So it's quite
Yeah.
fun to do. And it's not about like judging yourself, like, oh, I've not been to the gym in ages, I need to beat myself up. It's like, no, we'll just go then and start enjoying it. And then you might meet
Yeah.
someone in the gym if that's
Yeah.
what you want.
I'm being honest as well, like my ex did used to call me insecure and I used to hate it. And I used to be like, well, of course I'm insecure because you never tell me that you like me. I never feel certain or secure with you, all of this stuff. But then actually, after the breakup, I was like, yeah, okay, he made me feel pretty rubbish. He did. But also, no, I thought I was really secure with good self-esteem, but
Yeah,
I wasn't. So also I was honest with myself, like, okay, he probably made it worse,
yeah,
but I didn't have good self-esteem. So I've also made that better since, and that's really
yeah.
good now. And no one would be able to say that about me now. But
Mm,
that's where the honest with yourself is really
yeah,
important, to like learn and reflect and know that every relationship is two-sided.
exactly. And I think, if you look back at who you were when you got into the relationship, then for me personally, I know that when I got into the last relationship I was in, I wasn't in a good space. And I'm not blaming myself for it. But when you're not in a good space, you make choices from not that good space. And
Mm,
when your self-esteem is low, you can end up kind of tolerating more than what you would if it wasn't low. And then you can look back and be like, why did I even accept that? And it's like, well, if you went into it with low self-esteem, then it's no surprise, because if you didn't think much of yourself, then why would you be shocked if somebody didn't treat you right, so it's about being honest with how you were before that relationship,
yeah.
and then it can help you to be like, okay, well, if I want to improve my self-esteem, then that's really going to benefit me in future, and put your focus there, like it sounds like you have done. So it's exactly that. I mean, a breakup can be like a minefield of discovery, but
Great things can come. Some of the best things have
exactly,
come from breakup. Like,
yeah,
I got the job I'd always wanted literally a few months after, because like
wow,
you said, the stuff that you work on
mm.
manifests all around in every aspect of your life. Your like other relationships get better,
Yeah,
and sometimes your work can get better, like other things get better because of it.
yeah.
And recently online I've been seeing a lot like you don't need to love yourself to get into a
Mm,
relationship. And this is kind of a new thing that I'm seeing. And I used to think, you absolutely need to love yourself to get into a relationship. But now I'm understanding the point of view that we don't have to completely love ourselves to feel like we deserve to be loved.
mm,
However, I do think, and I think you've kind of said it as well, you do need to ensure that your self-esteem is still good before entering a relationship. So for the reason that you mentioned, you can tell if someone isn't treating you very well.
mm. I think yeah, I know what yeah, exactly. I think it's about, you're ready when you know you can trust yourself. So
Yeah.
your self-esteem might not be as high as you want it to be, but as long as you know you've got your own back. So you're like, yeah, I'm going to pay attention to that because I'm not feeling great about myself. But if someone says, or, there's this red flag, I know that I'll trust myself to walk away. And it's not to say that you have to fully love yourself and be the best version of you ever before you can even date. But I think it's about knowing that you what your boundaries are, and at least you're willing to really like look at that when you start dating, and say no when, and know when to walk away and not
Mm.
to tolerate. And again, like, you have to practice these things. So you might think, oh, my self-esteem's great now, go into a relationship, but we all want it to work, and we all are guilty of ignoring red flags and being like, it'll be fine. And even if your self-esteem is high. So I think I agree with that. I agree with both sides. I think there's
It's
a
like an ongoing journey all the time, I guess, isn't it?
100%. And I think it's the willingness to learn and grow, and the willingness to see. these like challenges and hurdles as an opportunity to grow, which isn't always easy at the time, and it's not always black and white, and there's a lot of feeling and emotion. But you know, it's that, as you say, having really, if you're honest with yourself and you take the time to reflect, and okay, my self-worth is quite low now, I'm not feeling great about myself, give it some attention. There's no harm in just slowing down, giving it some attention. And then as long as you have a self-awareness and you're like, okay, I've really worked at this, I'm not quite sure, but I'm ready to dip my toe in, and really like being gentle with yourself when you then have been on that journey and you're going into dating again, because you might think you're ready and you might not be, but you don't know until you try. So again, it's like there's one element of, yes, I agree with it, with both sides of loving yourself enough before, but also being willing, knowing that you're always going to be growing and learning along the way as well.
Can you talk to us a little bit and maybe show us a little bit some EFT?
Yeah, of course I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you want to know about EFT?
What is it? How does it regulate us? I don't really know
Yeah.
much about it other than that it's come up a lot on my Instagram, like adverts, and I've heard podcasts where it's like completely helped people in so many different ways. So I know, I trust that it works. But
Yeah.
what is it?
So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's also known as tapping, and that's because you're tapping on upper body acupoints, and they are acupoints used within acupuncture or acupressure, but you're stimulating them by a tapping technique with your finger. And it's a mixture of psychology with the calming down of your nervous system through the tapping on the acupoints. And the whole concept of it is that, so to try and explain it in simple terms, when you are kind of saying to yourself, oh, for example, I've gone through this breakup, I must just so my theme for this week has actually been my ex is on a pedestal. And what can happen is you can be talking your ex up so much and in awe of them, and they're the best person ever and they can do no wrong and they're going to be so happy. And the likelihood is that you're then talking yourself down. Like, I'm rubbish. There's nothing good about me. How did I ever get them? I've lost out on the best person ever. So to use EFT for that situation, what you'd be doing is naturally, when you're saying not very nice things to yourself, you'd be then getting frustrated with yourself. Why do I feel like this about myself? See, I am rubbish, and kind of spiral out of control in your own thoughts. Whereas when you bring EFT into it, it's about saying, even though I feel right now not very worthy, even though I'm talking my ex up and there's so many great things about them, I fully accept how I feel. And you're using statements that bring acceptance, acknowledgement into what it is you're feeling. And that's the psychology part. Because what we can do is we can resist what we're feeling because it's uncomfortable. And then actually the intensity of it magnifies. Whereas if you say, no, I accept that I feel this way, it really reduces that intensity, which is what helps you to calm down, calm your nervous system down, and just think from a more grounded, settled space. And by saying those things at the same time as stimulating the acupoints, that's sending signals to the emotional centers in your brain, and that's helping you to feel calm. So it's a combination of the both of them used simultaneously, and you can use it in so many times within your breakup. So it might be that you just can't sleep because you're thinking about your ex and you're lying in bed reading all the texts, and then you're like, oh, I'm reading these texts, and you're getting yourself into this spiral again. And you can say, even though, and so you set up the statement on the side of your hand point first, and you can say, even though I can't stop thinking about my ex and I can't sleep, I love, accept, and forgive myself. Even though my ex is just constantly on my mind, I accept how I feel right now. It's okay. And it's like a soothing statement to yourself. And when you've said it 3 times, you go around the upper body points and you repeat that. I'm thinking about my ex. I can't stop thinking about them. I can't sleep. I literally cannot get them out of my mind. And you just use your own words. And by you accepting exactly what you're feeling in that moment, actually you do rounds and you mark it a 0 to 10 before you do it. And you're likely feeling at a 10 if it's really intense. And as you do a round, you'll notice that intensity come down. And that helps to calm and regulate you in that moment. But then also, if you wake up and you're like, do you know what? I'm going to get on with the day today. I've had a good sleep. I'm really feeling I'm going to move on from this breakup. You can skip the side of the hand point. A lot of practitioners do it in different ways. This is the way I do it. And you can go straight to, yeah, I've got this. I'm going to get through this breakup. And you can go straight to it, to the tapping points on the upper body. I've got this. I'm going to get through this. I am so excited about my future. I'm going to get through this breakup. And you keep tapping on those like affirmation statements, and that can really like help to amplify those good feelings. So you can use it in different ways, and I like to use it in both. I like to encourage people to use tapping every single day for calming down their emotions and regulation, but also to get themselves a bit fired up as well, and use tapping in the way of, I've got this, I can do this. And it's been around since the 90s. It was originally brought in for military veterans, and there's been there's been a lot of research done on it. There's an amazing researcher called Dr. Peter Stapleton. I think she's based in Australia. She's got a new book out actually recently. I'd really recommend it if anyone's interested. And it's all around the science of EFT. There's been a lot of randomized control trials and different studies on it, and for different situations such as anxiety, stress. I think she even mentions eating disorders in there. There's loads of different uses for EFT. It's used for pain as well, physical pain, and it's really getting up and coming now. It's starting to be more recognized in the mainstream. So it's a really exciting time for EFT practitioners, because it is something that is, you've seen it on social media, because there is a lot more evidence now of how it works and how it helps people.
Yeah, because I think, did it come from America? Because it felt very American when it came over.
The person who brought it in, I feel like he was American, yeah. But it's the practitioner that I've done my training with is based in the UK, but she was one of the original kind of,
wow.
She worked closely with him at the time when it first came out, but it is everywhere now. There's a lot of EFT practitioners around, and a lot of EFT practitioners tend to have their own specialism and their own kind of area of work or expertise, and they work with clients in that specific niche or area. I mean, some practitioners will work more generally, but I first trained in EFT in 2015, actually to try and help. One of my friends gave me some EFT when she did it, and I thought, I'm going to do this, it might help me with my breakup. And I just kind of used it on myself and dipped in and out, but never really went that far with it in terms of having clients. And then it was in 2019 where I was actually reading tarot cards, and I was just getting constant inquiries about breakups, and when will my ex come back, and does my ex still love me? And I was like, wow, this is an eye-opener. There's a lot of people really struggling with breakup pain. And I remembered, EFT, like, this is the thing, I need to bring EFT into this. And then it kind of went away from tarot and then came into EFT, and that's specifically, I work with people with EFT for their breakup, for emotional discomfort through a breakup, and it helped me no end.
Yeah, I genuinely think, apart from obviously a very serious illness, like if you experience loss, grief, or experience someone being very seriously ill, then I think next to that, breakup is like the next worst pain.
Yeah.
Like, it is torturous, that pain that everyone in the world goes through. And when you see someone go through it, you never, like, you just know the feeling, and you're so grateful it's not you going through it at that time. And we never know when we're going to experience it, but it's a horrible, horrible pain. I'm not sure there's many, there's people that can have very mutual, happier breakups, but it's still painful for even family members can, when they're split up, that can hurt as well if you're close to the mother-in-law and things like that. When just now, if you were listening to the EFT bit but not watching, so you were tapping above, like, your
so
in between your eyebrows,
and then at the side of the eye, and then under the eye, and then under the nose, above the lip, and then beneath the lip in the crease of the chin, and then you go onto your collarbones,
right,
and then you go under your arm, and then you can tap your wrists together as well, and you can also, there's a point at the top of the head,
right.
And a lot of practitioners sometimes use both hands, and others just use one. I think with EFT, the main thing is once you know the technique, you can do it this is one of the reasons I love it so much, is because the technique is doable for yourself in the day-to-day. So you can use it yourself. It's always advised to be guided by a practitioner when the emotions really run deep, so they can really like keep you safe and held through it. But in terms of day-to-day, There's plenty of scripts online that you can follow that are kind of general, but EFT with a practitioner is your own words, your experience. Things will come up throughout the session where you will go a bit deeper into that. For example, so there's we can be faced with issues, and one of the theories that we were trained on it on my course is that you've got this like tabletop, which is the presenting issue, such as I've got no self-worth, this person has hurt me. But actually you can deal with that by using the tapping, the EFT, but underneath that tabletop there's legs that hold it up. So there might have been experiences in your past that led you to believe that you're not worthy. So not only do you use EFT tapping on the presenting issue in that time, you also use EFT for the things that come up from the past. So you might say, again, this is with a client and a practitioner in a one-to-one, you might say, okay, can you think of a time as far back as you can remember where maybe you felt a similar feeling? And it might be like, oh, when I was in school once, this happened. And you're like, okay, we'll do some EFT tapping on that. And actually, you're going back further in a session, but in terms of regulating those in the moment, I can't sleep, I can't stop thinking about my ex, this hurts, I can't accept it. Bring an EFT in, because it's all around acceptance, and it's all around, you might not accept the breakup, but work on accepting how you feel, because as long as you accept how you're feeling, that is kind for you. And when you're kind for you, that's when things tend to settle. When things tend to settle, it's a knock-on effect. You can make better, healthier choices for you, because you're not making choices from this emotional chaos. You found a way to regulate how you're feeling, and that's what's going to help you to start to move on, because you're calming yourself down in that moment. You're standing in, you're taking control of the situation. But like you said before, like with breakups, I don't think enough is said. I mean, I say all this, and I know full well that every single piece of advice I give, whether it's EFT, whether it's a practical step, whether it's do this little exercise in your journal, I know that a breakup is so distressing, and it can send people into the depths of despair. And it's okay to have professional help, to have therapy, to have one-to-one sessions, and really like give yourself grace, because this is really hard. And I never give advice thinking, oh, it's all right, you can just do this exercise and you're done, you'll be fine tomorrow. It's not like that. It's about really digging deep and being dedicated to the fact that it's going to take some work to get through this, but there's lots of things you can do to help yourself, and you can get through it.
Yeah, and when you have a friend that's going for a breakup, like, we don't get impatient with them. We accept that they're feeling that way, and we'll be there until they feel like they're over it, and that takes months. So I don't know why we can be so impatient and harsh on ourselves. And you're right, I'm actually training to be a psychotherapist at the minute, but that course involves hypnotherapy, which kind of spiritually can be quite a similar process. And I guess what's similar with EFT and hypnotherapy in ways is that it is a process. You can't just come to one session and be absolutely cured. But I think sometimes with the kind of spiritual practices, people are a little bit skeptical, because there's no proof after one session that it works. Like maybe you can see your calories on a watch after a gym. However, I think you need to, like you said, you need to give these things time to actually work, and then see how much they can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like, even as you go through and process the breakup, you're gonna have realizations months on. You're gonna start to look back and think, hang on a minute, now I'm in a clearer headspace. Why did this happen? Why did I allow this? Like, why did I put up with that in the relationship? Why did I act like that? Why did they, and then actually it's like, well, I've got more work to do. Like, things kind of, as the breakup goes on, it's like more things come up to the surface. And as you say, it's a process of really paying attention to what's going on for you, and growing from it and learning from it, and a lot of reflection. And not only just about, because I think another thing is, a lot of people can fall into, it's all their fault, they did this, and I'm not denying that people can be hurt, and some people are just not kind when it comes to relationship or the breakup. But also, I think it's so important not to fall into full self-blame or full other person blame. It's about, yes, acknowledging they did this, but also, what made me be okay with that? What made me not bring that up in that conversation? What made me just accept that even though I didn't want to?
Yeah.
Obviously, and I don't really speak about this because it deserves its own specialist support, but there's toxic and unhealthy and abusive relationships, and definitely, if that's something that you've been through and now you're reflecting on after your breakup, is going to a specialist service. And I always signpost if somebody's been through that, with a specialist worker, recovery work. But when it comes to, in inverted commas, normal relationships where you're looking back and you're going, you know what, I always said yes to that thing and I always wanted to say no.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's their fault because they kept asking me, but what made me always say yes when I wanted to say no? And kind of those like more kind of, I can break that pattern without the specialist support, but reflective. That's what I mean. It's like there's a lot we can all do to look at ourselves as well as the other person in any situation.
Some of my best advice I've ever got in a breakup was from a good friend, and she said, Daisy, you just need to rewire the thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, instead of thinking, oh, he did this because I'm this, or I'm not this, or I'm not enough this, or you need to be like, oh, okay, he did this because that's what he wants to do and that's how they want to behave. But actually, I didn't want to behave that way, or I'm not okay with that, or I'm okay with me being this way anyway. So whatever it takes to just rewire and trust the new story that you make, as long as it's like a healthy rewire and it helps you and it doesn't put down anyone else. But it is the acceptance, really. They did that and that's okay, because actually I would want a partner to do this anyway. That rewiring was the best advice I think anyone's ever give me in terms of like love and breakups, and I kind of do it. That helps with other things too, like it can help with work and other relationships. But I always have like a finale question. My question to you is, what's been the best advice that you've received in a breakup? Because everyone's kind of quick to give advice when someone's going through a hard time, but is there anything that's stuck out that like advice that's been given to you that you would give as well?
Do you know what? Actually, yes. And it was a bit harsh at the time. And I'm laughing because at the time I was like horrified, like, how dare she say this to me? And I've actually spoke about this on social media, not for a while, but when I was in the breakup, as I mentioned, I was having therapy anyway, and I carried on with it. And I was having this one session and I went and I was like, why did you not want to make it work though? Like, why? Why? It could have worked, and why didn't he want it? I don't understand why you wouldn't fight for it. And I was in this kind of like, how dare he do this to me and not want us to work? And she said to me, he has every right to not want to be with you. And I was like, oh. I was like, I want to get off this call right now. I'm really like, that's really
that's hard when you're going through it.
Yeah, but she was saying it with so much love. She was like, you can only control you, and you don't like his decision. However, he's got the right to choose. And often we can fall into that. How dare they? How dare they treat me like this? How dare they leave me? Like, I deserve to be with them. And it's like, hang on a minute. If you wanted to not be with them, you have the right to choose as well. And also, you now have the right to choose what you will do from here. And actually, at the time, when she said it to me, I knew it was good advice, but I was like, that's really hurt me.
You know what? It is really good advice though, controlling the controllables. And it's true. You're like, how dare they? But also you deserve to not have someone that is half sure on you. Like, you can flip that and be like, I deserve someone to be like completely, utterly, 1,000,000,000% sure that they wake up and they're like, oh my God, yes, her.
And if I rang him and I was like, why did you not choose to be with me? Why? And he said, oh, go on then, let's get back together. It would come from a place of, how dare you, and him just I'm obliged to now be with you. And you're right, like, you deserve to be with someone who wholeheartedly chooses you. So it's a two-pronged, isn't it, of you want to be with someone who wants to choose you every time. But yeah, that advice sounds blunt, but actually when you get into it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. They do have the right. What can I do? I've just got to move on now. So.
Oh,
That's good
gosh.
advice for me.
Yeah, that was a great answer and the perfect way to end this episode that's been so helpful. Well, I know it has been, but I really hope it has been for any listeners that are actually going through a breakup right now, because I think we're in lucky positions right now that we can reflect because we're not actually going through one.
Yeah.
But I really do hope that some of these techniques that Holly shared, you can maybe delve in further to things like EFT as well, will actually help you if you currently are struggling with a breakup. Holly, where can people follow you?
So I'm on Instagram on Breakups and Love __ because the Breakups and Love account was taken without the underscores. And I do have I've just brought it out a couple of weeks ago, a full video library of EFT guided sessions if you're going through a breakup. Yeah, so you can literally jump on it and look at, okay, tonight I can't sleep because I'm thinking about my ex, and I've got one for that. And once you're in, and there'll be new content added to it every month. And you can also request, you can say, look, I'm struggling with this, and I'll upload it as a video. So if you want to dip your toe into EFT and try it, there's other stuff in there as well as EFT. But and I'll be opening a membership soon, a weekly membership. So again, to get support every single week for when you're going through a breakup, and more focusing on the rebuild and building back up your confidence after your breakup. So I look forward to welcoming anybody who wants to come and join me.
Well, thank you so much. I never even, when I was going through my breakups that I've had, and the most recent one a few years ago, I never really thought to seek help on social media. I don't know why. I think I went to podcasts actually, but I didn't even think about Instagram, which is a shame, because I think your page is so helpful. Like, even not going through a breakup, I can see things that you post and I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, that makes so much sense. So thank you for all the fabulous work that you do, and look forward to catching up and watching how your journey with EFT grows as well. You can follow Daisy Dates Podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. You can stream, you can watch on YouTube, but you can follow on Instagram, TikTok, and you can follow my personal account as well, Daisy Bell on Instagram and DaisyBell6 on TikTok. Thank you so much for listening, watching, and I'll see you next time.